Meet Donald Trump's barber. Adrien Wood cut President Trump's hair for more than 20 years. Wood says Trump was so appreciative of his haircuts.
I don't wear a toupee. It's my hair. I swear.
At 82 years old, Adrien Wood finally chose to speak. For over 3 decades, he kept one of the most peculiar and private professional relationships in total secrecy. He had trimmed, shaped, and maintained the hair of one of the world's most recognizable and polarizing figures, Donald Trump. For years, people speculated, joked, and theorized about the man's signature hairstyle.
He may have the most famous head of hair on the planet and the most mysterious. Everyone wants to know what's up with Donald Trump's hair.
But Adrien remained silent. He never gave an interview, never revealed a detail, never broke the bond of trust that existed between barber and client, until now. What could make a man so committed to his craft, so loyal to his clients, finally share what he knows? Time, reflection, and perhaps the realization that some stories deserve to be told. This isn't just about hair, it's about power, image, and the rituals that define public personas. It's also about a barbershop, a quiet sanctuary on Manhattan's Upper East Side, where history unfolded in whispers and scissor strokes. Adrien Wood was more than just Trump's barber. He was a guardian of appearances, a silent observer of greatness, and a craftsman whose chair hosted everyone from presidents to rock stars. And now, as his hands grow older and his voice steadier,
the shop developed a huge clientele of celebrities. Mike Wallace, Henry Fonda, our president was a customer for a long time in the shop.
He opens up about what he witnessed, what he learned, what he never dared to say until now. This is the beginning of a story that takes us deep into the unseen world behind the mirror, where image meets identity, where trust is everything, and where the truth, finally, is ready to be heard. Long before he ever touched a president's hair, Adrien Wood was just a young boy in the United Kingdom, enchanted by the rhythm of scissors and the quiet power of the barber's chair. He wasn't born into fame, nor did he chase it. What he wanted was mastery. In the small village where he grew up, he began trimming the hair of friends, neighbors, and family, learning the way hair fell, how people relaxed in the chair, and how conversations flowed naturally when the blade hummed gently near the skin. There was a rhythm to it, almost like music, and as Adrien grew, so did his ambition. The art of barbering became his identity. He didn't dream of spotlights or headlines. He dreamed of perfect fades, clean lines, and a shop of his own, one where people felt seen, heard, and transformed. In the early 1970s, Adrien took the leap. He left behind the familiar comfort of his homeland and flew to New York City, chasing opportunity in a city known for chewing people up and spitting them out. It was noisy, unpredictable, and unforgiving. But Adrien didn't flinch. He had his tools, his training, and a calm confidence that couldn't be shaken. Soon, he found himself at the doors of Paul Mole, the city's oldest barbershop.
In front of Paul Mole, you can find a wooden Indian statue. It's guarded the entrance to the shop for over 70 years, a piece of history that has become a symbol to a historic barber shop.
The place didn't just offer haircuts, it offered history. And Adrien, with his hands steady and his heart grounded, stepped in, unaware that this would become the stage where legends sat and stories began. The legacy of Paul Mole. When Adrien walked into Paul Mole barbershop for the first time, he felt it immediately. The weight of history, the scent of aged leather and sandalwood, the hum of tradition in every corner. Founded in 1913, Paul Mole wasn't just a barbershop, it was a relic of refinement, a living museum of grooming excellence. Presidents, musicians, and Wall Street titans had all sat in those chairs. The barbers wore crisp jackets, the razors gleamed, and the conversations were always just loud enough to matter. Adrien knew he didn't just want to cut hair, he wanted to preserve something. At Pall Mall, there were no gimmicks, no flashy trends, just timeless craftsmanship and personal connection. Adrien thrived here. He didn't rush. He studied faces, adjusted angles, and delivered haircuts that enhanced more than just appearances. They restored confidence. The regulars noticed. So did the elite. Through the 1970s and 80s, New York City changed. Styles evolved. Flashy salons and celebrity stylists popped up everywhere. But Pall Mall stayed rooted, and Adrien stood at the heart of it, firm, calm, consistent. He believed that while trends come and go, the core of barbering is eternal. Clean lines, quiet moments, and trust. The shop became his second home. Clients became family.
I've been educated by my customers.
Just as important, his fellow barbers, who he calls family.
And word of Adrien's skill, professionalism, and discretion spread quickly through the city's most exclusive circles. His chair wasn't just a place for grooming, it was where powerful men let their guard down. And one day, a name walked in that would change everything: Donald J. Trump. It was sometime in the late 1970s when Donald Trump first walked into Pall Mall Barbershop. He wasn't the global icon yet. He was a sharp, driven real estate developer on the rise, already known for his bold personality and aggressive ambition. He didn't come in with fanfare, but his presence was unmistakable. Adrien noticed it right away. The confidence, the precision in his speech, the way he sized up the room before sitting down. From that first visit, it was clear that Trump wasn't like the other clients. He didn't want suggestions. He didn't ask what was fashionable. He told Adrien exactly what he wanted. Only cut around the edge. Never touch the top. That was the rule. No exceptions. The top of his hair was off limits. Sacred territory that only Trump himself could manage. Adrien didn't question it. He respected it. And that earned him something far more valuable than fame: Trump's trust. As the years passed, Trump returned again and again with the same instructions. His hair never changed. No matter what roles he took on, real estate mogul, television star, or future president, his style remained fixed.
Through the years, Trump's golden locks have moved around. But one thing has stayed the same: his enthusiasm for his signature style.
It wasn't about vanity. It was about control. Trump had built an image, and Adrien had become a quiet guardian of it. Their relationship was professional, but it was precise. Adrien never overstepped, never pried. He followed the rules. And in doing so, he became one of the few people allowed that close to Trump's carefully crafted mask, the ritual of control. For most people, a haircut is routine. For Donald Trump, it was ritual. From the moment he entered the barbershop, there was a pattern: predictable, meticulous, and always on his terms. Adrien learned quickly that Trump's grooming wasn't just about appearance. It was a performance of consistency, a declaration of authority in a world that constantly shifted. The rule never changed, only trim around the edges. The top, untouchable. That was Trump's domain. He arrived with it already styled, often spending time in the mirror before Adrien even began. Adrien could sense the weight of it, not the hair itself, but what it represented: power, control, stability. Trump's image was built like a skyscraper, and his hair was the flag on top. Most clients surrender themselves to the barber's expertise. Trump never did. He knew what he wanted, and Adrien respected that. No debates, no creative freedom, just precision. Over time, this unspoken understanding created a unique bond between them, not of friendship, but of trust built through unwavering boundaries. Adrien never asked personal questions. Trump rarely engaged in small talk. Their conversations, when they happened, were sharp and direct. Business, real estate, big plans. Adrien never expected warmth. What he delivered instead was consistency, and that to Trump meant everything. In an unpredictable world where even allies shifted with the wind, Trump valued predictability, and Adrien, scissors in hand, offered him the one thing he couldn't buy anywhere else: a perfect, familiar edge, every single time. To the outside world, Donald Trump's hair was a spectacle, mocked, analyzed, and speculated upon. Was it real? A wig? A comb-over masterpiece?
They say you wear the worst hairpiece I've ever seen. What a horrible wig. No, I mean, it's actually my hair.
Theories flourished, but only Adrien knew the truth. He had seen it up close for decades, touched it with his own hands, and followed the same exact instructions every time. And yes, he confirms, it was real. All of it. Trump's hair wasn't an accident. It was architecture, carefully combed forward from the sides, swept up and over with a touch of volume, then locked in place. He used specific products, lightweight sprays, volumizing foams, nothing too heavy. The result? A style that held its shape, but moved just enough to appear natural. It wasn't vanity, it was engineering. And still, Adrien never touched the top. Trump managed that part himself. He would arrive with it already styled, step into the chair, and let Adrien take care of the perimeter. No improvisation, no deviation. It was a performance, practiced to perfection. Occasionally, Adrien would catch Trump examining his reflection, adjusting strands until they fell into just the right place. He never rushed. In those moments, Adrien saw something deeper, not just a man worried about looks, but a man protecting his image like a fortress. Trump's hair wasn't about fashion, it was about identity. It told the world, this is who I am, and I won't change for anyone. And for over 30 years, Adrien played his part, maintaining the illusion, honoring the ritual, and keeping the truth quietly to himself. A barber's code. In a profession built on trust, Adrien Wood understood the unspoken rule that what's said in the chair stays in the chair. It wasn't just about grooming, it was about respect. Celebrities, CEOs, musicians, and politicians all passed through Paul Mole, and many returned regularly, not just for the cut, but for the silence. Adrien never repeated what he heard. He never chased headlines. His scissors were sharp, but his lips were sealed. With Donald Trump, the code was even stricter. Adrien didn't ask questions. He didn't pry into business deals or personal scandals. He focused on the haircut, just as Trump liked it. In return, he earned what few others could: consistent access to a man known for his guarded nature. It wasn't always easy. There were moments Adrien overheard things, mentions of projects, frustrations, even brief remarks about politics. But Adrien stayed in his lane. To him, the chair wasn't a place for drama. It was a sanctuary. And that principle became the foundation of his long-standing reputation. Over the years, journalists tried to get him to speak. Friends asked what Trump was really like. Adrien always gave the same answer: I'm his barber, not his biographer. That response came from discipline, but also from pride. Pride in being a professional who didn't sell secrets. Pride in running a shop where even the most powerful men could feel like themselves. Now, in his later years, Adrien shares, not for attention, but for the record. And even in doing so, his respect remains unbroken. In the late 1980s, the future of Paul Mole Barbershop hung by a thread. Rent prices on the Upper East Side had exploded, and the shop's prestigious ground floor location was becoming impossible to afford. Adrien, who had spent years building his clientele and upholding the legacy of the establishment, faced a painful possibility: the end of everything he had worked for. He didn't sleep well during those weeks. The thought of closing the doors, of losing the very place where his life's work had taken root, haunted him. One afternoon, as he trimmed Trump's hair in silence, the stress finally surfaced. He confessed, almost in passing, "I don't know how much longer we can hold on." Trump didn't react immediately. He just looked straight into the mirror. Then, calmly, he said, "Move it upstairs." Adrien blinked, surprised. Trump continued, "Rent's cheaper. The reputation will carry you. People don't come for the window, they come for the cut." It sounded too simple to be true. But Adrien trusted the logic. And more than that, he trusted the man who built skyscrapers by seeing opportunity where others saw obstacles. He made the move. The second floor became Paul Mole's new home. And, just as Trump predicted, the loyal clients kept coming. In the end, that quiet piece of advice didn't just save a business, it preserved a legacy. Adrien never forgot it. For all the noise around Trump, that moment stood out, direct, effective, and unexpectedly generous. Conversations without cameras. While most of the world knew Donald Trump through flashing cameras and headline quotes, Adrien saw a different version. In the quiet of the barbershop, far from the noise of crowds and microphones, Trump wasn't a performer. He was focused, deliberate, and always working something through in his mind. Their conversations were never casual. Trump didn't waste words. He talked about deals, real estate negotiations, licensing strategies, skyscrapers in progress. He spoke about leverage and timing, risk and reward. Politics in those early years barely came up. If it did, it was brief, strategic. His mind was always on the next project, the next move. Adrien listened. That's what he did best. Not just because it was polite, but because it taught him things about people, ambition, and the way powerful minds work. Trump wasn't warm, but he wasn't cold either. He was measured, intentional, always aware of how he came across, even in a space where no one was recording. There was one thing Adrien noticed above all else. Trump never second-guessed himself. Even in private, he projected certainty. There was no maybe, no I hope, only I will. That confidence, whether earned or exaggerated, was part of the image he had built brick by brick. In a world where so many people hide behind masks, Adrien realized something unexpected. Trump's public persona wasn't an act, it was a choice. And in that chair, with scissors in hand, Adrien came to understand that maintaining a man's hair could mean preserving the armor he wears every day. Not every famous client who entered Paul Mole carried the same weight, the same air of dominance. Some brought a different energy entirely, like John Lennon. When Lennon first visited the barbershop, he slipped in quietly without entourage or spectacle. He didn't act like a rock legend. He acted like a man searching for calm. Adrien remembered that about Lennon, the stillness in his presence, the thoughtfulness in his words. Unlike Trump, who was sharp and focused, Lennon was loose, reflective. He didn't dictate his haircut. He asked. He wondered aloud. Sometimes he spoke about music, about Yoko, or about how fame could be isolating, even in a city as loud as New York. One day, as Adrien carefully shaped his signature look, Lennon chuckled and said, "I think my hair gets more attention than I do." It was a soft joke, but there was truth in it. Lennon's look had become part of his identity, messy, natural, free. And yet, even that appearance was curated in its own way. Adrien's job was to make it seem effortless, even if it wasn't. He never treated Lennon like a celebrity, just a man who needed a cut and a little space to breathe. Lennon appreciated that. There was no press, no probing, just scissors and silence. For Adrien, it was a reminder that fame takes many forms. Trump and Lennon couldn't have been more different, yet both trusted the same chair. And through their contrast, Adrien saw the many faces of power, one sharp-edged, one quietly searching. If Lennon brought a sense of calm and introspection, John F. Kennedy Jr. brought charisma. He didn't just walk into a room, he lit it up.
Life in politics seemed predestined for John F. Kennedy Jr. Of course, he was also one of America's most famous bachelors before Carolyn Bessette stole his heart.
There was something effortless about the way he carried himself, as though charm ran in his blood. But behind that polished appearance, Adrien saw a young man navigating the weight of legacy. Kennedy Jr. was a regular at Paul Mole. He always greeted Adrien with a smile and asked how business was going. He was curious, respectful, and surprisingly grounded for someone who had grown up in the public eye. Where Trump exuded control and Lenin radiated humility, Kennedy embodied balance, well-mannered, but never distant. During haircuts, their conversations ranged from light-hearted stories to deeper reflections. He spoke about his work in law, his magazine, and sometimes the burden of being a Kennedy. Adrien could sense the pressure he carried, even if he didn't always say it out loud. He once mentioned quietly, "It's not easy being expected to be someone you didn't choose to be." Adrien remembered giving him a shorter cut before a magazine shoot one summer afternoon. Kennedy wanted to look sharp, clean, timeless. When the photos were published, Adrien recognized his own handiwork framing that familiar jawline. It was a proud moment, not because of fame, but because he helped someone feel confident in their skin. For Adrien, JFK Jr. was more than a client. He was a reminder that even the most admired figures seek grounding. And sometimes, that grounding comes with a simple haircut. Ordinary men, extraordinary moments. Though Adrien's client list included global icons, what made Paul Mole truly special was the way it blended the extraordinary with the everyday. On any given day, a construction worker could be seated next to a billionaire. A teacher could follow a movie star. And Adrien never treated anyone differently. His chair was a place of equality, where respect wasn't based on fame. It was earned through presence. Some of Adrien's most meaningful conversations weren't with celebrities at all, but with regular men sharing quiet moments. A tired father venting about work, a young man preparing for a job interview, an elderly patron reminiscing about a lost love. These weren't headline stories, but they were deeply human. And Adrien listened to them all with the same attention he gave to the powerful. Still, the contrast fascinated him. Famous clients often carried layers of performance, but when they sat down and took off the armor, they revealed their doubts and hopes, just like anyone else. Trump spoke of control, Lenin of peace, Kennedy of legacy. Yet a neighborhood client might speak about rising rent, a child's illness, or dreams that never fully came true. For Adrien, the barbershop became a kind of human archive, a place where stories were shared without expectation, where silence wasn't awkward but comforting, and where everyone, celebrity or not, walked out feeling just a little more whole. That was the beauty of the craft. It wasn't just about the cut, it was about connection, the quiet power of being seen. Conclusion. For Adrien, cutting hair was never just a job.
Haircut. This haircut.
Yeah, I don't do that type of work. I definitely don't.
It was an art form, one that demanded discipline, intuition, and an eye for detail. Over the decades, he refined his technique not just for style, but for meaning. Every client was different, every face unique, and Adrien believed a haircut should enhance a person's natural presence, not mask it. With high-profile clients, the stakes were even higher. Their hair had to hold up on camera, under lights, and during long days. Adrien mastered methods that blended durability with style. He layered for volume, textured for movement, and used lightweight products to maintain flexibility without stiffness. The result was elegance that looked effortless, even though it never was. Trump's haircut was the most specific. Adrien used a technique he referred to as perimeter trimming, cutting only around the edges, leaving the top untouched. That single rule defined their entire working relationship. Trump's top was his domain. He styled it himself each day, using a careful combination of blow-drying, brushing, and light spray to create that iconic sweep. Adrien's job was to respect that and shape everything else to match. Other celebrities had their quirks too. One rock legend insisted on keeping his voluminous hair, even as it thinned. Adrien had to create the illusion of fullness with subtle layering, shaping it just right to preserve the spirit of youth. It was never about hiding age. It was about holding on to identity. That, Adrien believed, was the true job of a barber. Not to change people, but to reveal them. In the quiet space between scissor snips and mirror glances, Adrien learned more about identity than any book could teach. Over the decades, he discovered that grooming wasn't just about appearance. It was about psychology. How a person presents themselves is often a reflection of how they want to be seen, or sometimes, how they wish to feel. Trump's obsession with consistency, Lennon's search for simplicity, and Kennedy's need for polished balance weren't vanity, they were strategy. Each man used his appearance as a kind of armor, a shield between their private selves and the world's expectations. Adrien respected that. He never judged it. He simply became the craftsman behind the curtain, trusted to maintain the illusion while understanding the truth beneath it. Clients often revealed more in their silence than in their words. The slump of shoulders, the glance into the mirror, the hesitation before asking for a change. Adrien read those signs. He knew when a man was reinventing himself after loss, when another was clinging to routine to feel in control. Hair, he realized, was never just hair. It was memory. It was power. It was identity. And over time, a barber becomes more than a service provider. He becomes a keeper of secrets, a silent companion in people's transitions. Adrien carried those moments quietly, respectfully, like precious cargo no one else could see. It was this unspoken bond, the trust between barber and client, that kept Adrien grounded. In a world full of noise, he had mastered the power of quiet connection. Now, with a lifetime behind him and no image left to protect, Adrien Wood speaks plainly. He doesn't seek attention. He isn't settling scores. He's simply sharing what he held close for decades. The truth about a man, a hairstyle, and a bond that defied headlines. Donald Trump's hair, long the subject of ridicule and rumor, is indeed real. Not a wig, not surgically implanted. Real hair, maintained with care, discipline, and personal obsession. Adrien followed one rule: never touch the top. And Trump kept his part, styling it daily with the precision of a man who knew every angle of the camera and every shadow of public perception. Yes, he used Propecia to slow hair loss. Yes, he arranged every strand deliberately. But there were no smoke and mirrors, just a ritual, repeated for decades, that became as much a part of Trump's image as his voice or his name. The world may mock it, analyze it, or obsess over it, but to Adrien, it was just another job. A job done with consistency, integrity, and silence. Now, as Adrien reflects on a career that saw the heads and minds of legends, he feels no regret. He didn't chase the spotlight. He honored the chair. He preserved stories that weren't his to tell, until now, when time has softened the boundary. And what he leaves us with is more than gossip. It's a reminder. Behind every polished image is a person, and behind that person, someone like Adrien, steady hands, listening ears, and a story waiting quietly to be told. At 82, Adrien Wood, once the silent, steady hand behind Donald Trump's famously scrutinized hairstyle, has finally broken his silence. After more than 3 decades of loyal service inside New York's oldest barbershop, he opens up for the first time about the man behind the mirror. What begins as a simple story of haircuts slowly unfolds into a deeper reflection on control, identity, and the quiet power of trust. Through Adrien's eyes, we witness untold moments with Trump, rare glimpses of Lennon and JFK Jr., and a lifetime of lessons learned one trim at a time. Now, with age softening his reserve, Adrien shares the truth, tears, truth, and all.